Alright, it says I'm live. If you guys can hear me, please let me know and we will get into it. Let me pop out the chat and we will get into it. Hold on, it's loading. Dun, dun. Alright, still haven't got anything yet, so if you guys can hear me, please let me know. What's up, Tony? Papers in here. Yep, he says let's dominate. I totally agree. Trent says, Chris, do you ever get mad? I can't see you arguing with anybody. Not really. I don't really get mad. I mean, I might get a little mad at Kyle Busch here and there, but nothing too serious. Alright, Big Girl says you're good. Good Luck Man says afternoon, guys. What is up? Alright, I'll let some more people flock in here. Then we'll talk a little bit about ownership. Let me just make sure my live stream's looking good here because it's a little bit more delayed than usual, it seems like. Everyone's popping in. What is up? What's up, Jason? What's up, Dustin? He says he needs some cash cores. We'll get into that. Kelly, what is up? Good morning, Chris. Let's get some green, buddy. Go Kyle Busch. Oh, man, Kyle Busch. Every single week with that guy. If you fade him, he does good. If you play him, he wrecks out and finishes last. That's just how it goes with Kyle Busch today, or these days. Mike says, what's up? Would you say your top sleeper pick is, I'm thinking, Ty Dillon? I wouldn't really say Ty Dillon's a sleeper pick. He's kind of just like a mega chalk cheap guy. There's nothing sleeperish about him today. John says, hey Chris, who scores more raw points today, Reddick or Austin Dillon? Thanks for all you do. Says that my video's a little bit skippy. Alright, 1 second. It seems like it's a little bit laggy. It looks good on my end, but also I imagine my end's probably gonna look better than your guys's. Anyway, let me get back to the chat. So before I answer a bunch of questions, I just want to go over on some ownership on this slate. For the chalk dominators, I think Joey Logano is probably going to end up being our highest owned guy. He's on the pole. He's performed very well at the pole here at Michigan. It's been a very good track for him. And I believe it says it's pretty laggy. It's out of focus. Is this true? I unplugged the camera. Let me know. I don't know why it's being laggy today. I'm in the same spot as usual. It says the Wi-Fi is good too. So, but anyway, guys, I think you're going to be pretty high owned in the slate. Joey Logano, he's on the pole, and clean air is pretty huge in Michigan. We've seen the pole sitter like Joey Logano perform very well here. He dominated last year. I think he led 163 out of the 200 laps, and he's won 3 out of the 4 races he's actually been on the pole at Michigan, and I think he's just a really safe, solid play here at 9,700, not breaking the bank, so it's not like you're paying like 11,000 like you are for Kevin Harvick and Truex. Now, there's no PD upside here, and if he loses the lead, it's going to be pretty rough for him to actually pay off that price tag because there's absolutely no PD upside here, but I still think he's a fine option, and if he leads a good portion of stage 1, as long as he stays out front from the competition caution, he should end up being one of the better plays on the slate. Now, you can go with the reasoning of maybe you want to go underweight on him because there's just not many laps, and if he loses the lead early, guys like Truex, guys like Blaney could easily outscore him with their PD upside, because it would not surprise me if they ended up getting up front and leading laps as well. So there's the one reason you could go underweight on Logano, or if you think he's just going to dominate this race, you could go way overboard. I'm personally kind of trying to go even with the field because I really like that PD upside we get with Martin Truex Jr. and Ryan Blaney, but I do think Joey Logano is going to be pretty heavy chalk today. I also think Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin are going to pick up some ownership as well. I don't really love stacking the guys up front, especially for a race that there's only 156 laps. So I'm just making sure the spreadsheet's out of focus. Oh, it's better now? Okay, but anyway, I don't love stacking the guys up front, so I'm probably only picking one of those 3 guys in each lineup. I might have a couple with 2 mixed in, but you're certainly not stacking up all 3 because that's going to really limit your upside. Because again, there's not like 300 plus laps in this race. If there was 300, 500 laps, we could certainly stack the guys up front, but with only 156, I feel like taking one guy up front and mixing it in with some place differential guys is probably the way to go. And if you also don't think that the guys up front are going to lead enough laps to overcome the guys with place differential, you could certainly just go the Truex and Blaney route, just lock in that PD upside, and they can certainly get a top 3 in lead laps and win this race. So that's kind of one thing I'm kind of debating on, like making lineups with guys up front and mixing in some PD, or just making some lineups that just go straight PD with Truex and Blaney. I think both strategies are viable, and I'm going to certainly have a mix in between my lineups and my 150 max. And then some place differential guys I think are going to be pretty chalky. Eric Jones, he's starting 23rd and he's 8,800. I think a lot of people are going to buy into the narrative of he just lost his ride next year. And we don't know where he's going to be, but I think that's pretty motivating for a guy. And I think Eric Jones is going to want to come out and run pretty well. Now, Michigan hasn't been his greatest track in the world. He only has 1 top 5 here in the past 6 races, but he does have 4 top 15s, average running position of 13.8. There's a good chance we could see a top 10 running from Eric Jones. It's also a pretty wide track, so that could also work in his benefit as well, because he loves to hit the wall. So the more room for him, the better. So I think that could work in Eric Jones' favor as well. And then other guys I think are going to be pretty chalky down here. We have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting 32nd. He should be pretty chalky. He ran pretty well last week. Now, it's always scary to hear that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is going to be chalk because, look, the guy's inside of the car caught on fire randomly one race, and it's kind of sad. That didn't even surprise me. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much something that would happen to Ricky Stenhouse. But it's looking like he's going to be one of the highest owned drivers on the slate. But I think it's good chalk for the most part. I'm not going to try to go way overweight on Stenhouse. I'm going to try to more so match the field, because if it goes down in flames, I'd rather it not really affect me too much instead of being all in on Stenhouse. But he just have 4 top 20s here the past 6 races, in a top 10, and a top, obviously it would have a top 15 as well. And if you're looking at his last 9 races this season at these similar track types at the large ovals, Stenhouse has 5 top 20s, 2 top 5s, and 2 top 10s. So he actually hasn't been too bad, and he's starting 32nd, so he's actually one of the safer plays on the slate, and that's super scary to say with Ricky Stenhouse. And then if you're dropping down to the cheap range, Ryan Preece, Ty Dillon, Corey LaJoie, these are going to be some of the chalkiest plays on the slate, because if you're just trying to get in guys like Truex, Blaney, Harvick, Hamlin, Logano, you're going to have to dip down to this 5K range, and Preece and Ty Dillon just stand out far and away from the field for a lot of these cheap guys. I mean, Suarez is fine. McDowell is not really that great at 21st. Ryan Newman starting 13th. Just a little bit too high up. But you can get guys like Ty Dillon, Ryan Preece, and Corey LaJoie that have top 25 cars for the most part, and they are dirt cheap and starting in the mid-30s. So pretty much a lock to gain around 10 to 15 spots with these guys, and they're pretty easy fill-ins for our lineup, because you're going to easily allow you to fit in guys like Harvick, Hamlin, and those kind of guys, because we're definitely going to want to do that. We're not going to want to just skip out in dominators. I know there's only 156 laps, so that's 117 dominator points off the top of my head, which is not a lot, but we still need guys that can finish high, and the guys that can potentially lead laps are all going to be expensive. So you're going to have to definitely dip into that 5K range, but there's some really good options this week. You can even look at Suarez and who's the other guy down there? Or yeah, just Suarez. I already mentioned Preece, Ty Dillon, and Corey LaJoie. But that's pretty much it for the chalk guys. I think the GPP dominators, as usual, it's going to be Brad Keselowski. He just tends to always be in that 10 to 20% owned range, and he's never a guy that you can fade, because he is just so consistent this season, and he always seems to find a way, whether he gambles his way up front, does some strategy, or he's just in the right place at the right time. It usually tends to work out for Brad Keselowski, so he's someone you always want to have ownership in GPPs, especially last week. Not a lot of people were on Keselowski last week, and I was like, well, it's Keselowski. There's a good chance he just might find his way up front, and he did at the beginning. He was around 15% owned. I had 15% ownership. I felt fine with that. Ended up working out. And Kyle Busch, he should be another GPP dominator. Chase Elliott as well. But I think the chalk is really just going to be Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, and I think people are going to mix in the Truex and Blaney's too. That's pretty much all I want to talk about for ownership. If you want my opinions on every single driver, I did that on Friday, so you can watch the preview video. And then we'll just get into the Q&A right now. And let me just make sure the stream's not like broke, because people are saying it's laggy today. Let me just make sure the stream's not like broke, because people are saying it's laggy. Well, it looks solid from what I'm watching on the computer right now. But anyway, so if you guys have any questions, you can comment them now, and I'm just gonna go to the very top, and I'll start. Let me just pop the chat back out so I can reload it. All right. So I will scroll up and I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. So Chris says, sorry, I always have long questions. Cash game, I have Blaney, Ty Dillon, and Stenhouse, and Suarez. So Hamlin or Truex are balanced with Jones and Elliott over Suarez and Hamlin, Truex. So you have Blaney, Bell, Ty Dillon, Stenhouse, and Suarez. Or you want to go Hamlin or Truex? Or would you rather go balanced with Jones and Elliott over Suarez? Oh, I kind of like that Jones and Elliott right there. Like, Suarez is fine, but I kind of like that Jones-Elliott because I think Jones is going to be pretty high owned today and definitely think he's a good play. So I'm going to lean the Jones-Elliott route, but I don't really feel too confident in Elliott, but I still think he's a fine option today. Let's see. Chris says rank these four in cash: Suarez, Priest, Ty Dillon, and LaJoie. Priest, Dillon, LaJoie, and Suarez. Brian says who are your core plays today? Core plays, I guess, just like Ryan Priest, like Blaney, Truex, those kind of guys. I really like them a lot, and Eric Jones. AFG says avoid Johnson and Boyer. I'm not really on either of them, so I'm probably much going to be avoiding them for the most part. I might have like a sprinkle of Johnson and Boyer, but nothing too serious. Brian says this may be a silly question, but what is the difference between a cash game and a tourney game? I usually play a $4 entry 20 max lineup. Is that considered a tourney or cash? Well, I just see Dude just answered it for you, so I'm not going to do it again. So appreciate that, Dude. Thanks for answering it for me. Let's see. Dude says race day equals rain day. There's no rain in the forecast today, thankfully. It says 0% chance of rain, and it's supposed to be completely sunny. So just cross your fingers. It would never surprise me if it ends up raining, though, for NASCAR, because it happens pretty much every single time. Let's see. AFG says, in the last 6 races at Michigan, Harvick has 2 wins and 3 top 5s. Yeah, Harvick's pretty much good at every single track. He's just very expensive, and the problem is with Harvick is that he's got to get past Logano and Hamlin at the very beginning, which is not easy to do, so I don't think he's an absolute lock in this slate, but it would not surprise me if he comes out and leads the most laps and wins the race. I mean, he's been pretty much the top dog all season, him and Denny Hamlin, and I'm certainly going to have a good amount of Kevin Harvick today. I think anywhere from like 25 to 35% is probably a good way to go. Let's see. Stiblebach said, I would love to see a clinic on building 20, 50, or 150 lineups. I can certainly do that. I did post a video on my Patreon on how I build my lineups, but I could always do something for that on YouTube eventually. It's a process, but it's fun. Let's see. Okay, John says, hey Chris, who scores more raw points today, Reddick or Austin Dillon? Thanks for all you do. I think Tyler Reddick has a better chance of scoring more raw points. He's certainly someone that can pick up fast laps, and I think he's got top 10 potential here. If you're looking at his numbers at large ovals this season, please scroll all the way over to the 2020 statistics. Tyler Reddick has an average finish of 10.8. He's got 9 top 20s. He's finished inside the top 20 each and every single time. He's got 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s. Now, Austin Dillon's also been very good at the large ovals this season, but I think Tyler Reddick is a better play at a cheaper price point. So I would go with Tyler Reddick there because I think his probability of finishing in the top 10 is higher than Austin Dillon's. Jason says, morning. What is up? Let's see. Oh, Juliana's in here. Hello. It's my girlfriend. Always nice to have you in here. Frankie says, Blaney, Logano, Jones, Byron, Stenhouse, and Priest. How do you like that, Chris? So you got Blaney, Logano, 2 dominators, and you got Jones, Byron, 2 place differential guys. Well, Stenhouse is also place differential, and then Priest. I think that's a great lineup, and I think you did a very good job, Frankie. Let's see. Is anyone going to the back? Not that I know of as of right now, but if something happens on the live stream, you guys can please let me know. I'd appreciate that. John says, favorite low-owned tournament option? Do you mean like a mid-range, a dominator, or a cheap guy? I guess up top, I guess I'd have to say someone like Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski. So I think they're going to go under-owned today. I'm not sure if Chase Elliott's going to go under-owned at 9,300, but I do like his chances today. He's been pretty good at Michigan. He's got 5 top 10s the past 6 races here, and he's been great at the large ovals so far this season. One of the best numbers right behind Ryan Blaney for the most part. He's been up there with Kevin Harvick, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin. He's also second in average green flag speed at these track types, so I think Chase Elliott is a pretty strong tournament play. Also, Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, those kind of guys are the guys I think are going to go a little bit lower owned than Hamlin, Truex, Blaney, and Logano. What is up, Timothy? Dustin says, thoughts on Blaney, Truex, Logano build? I think that's fine. I'm going to have quite a few lineups like that. I don't love using 3 dominators, but also keep in mind that Blaney and Truex are also a little bit of place differential plays as well. So I think they're totally fine. And I think that's a fine build, having those three, because then you can lock up the early dominator points with Logano. Then I think Truex and Blaney are going to end up probably being top 5 contenders, potentially top 3. AFG says, will Newman be a decent play? I don't really think so. He's starting 13th. Now, this has been a very good track for him. I will give him credit for that. But really, this season, he's a 15th to 20th place car, and I just think there's much better plays at the price point. Like, he's priced right beside Chris Buescher, I think is a better play than Suarez, Ryan Preece, Ty Dillon, Corey LaJoie. So I'd just rather take the cheaper options than those guys. I mean, you can sprinkle in like a couple of percentages of Ryan Newman if you're building 150 lineups. But if you're building like 1 or 3 entries, I don't see why you'd want to use Ryan Newman. It seems very risky to me. Let's see. Jason says, must be a typo. No, man, you love BJ McLeod, but no BJ McLeod for me. I just exit those guys out. But yeah, I don't even think he's not even on slate today. So, and I just exit out all those cheap options anyway. But definitely don't play BJ McLeod because he is not in the player pool. Let's see. Frankie says, Dustin, I was thinking about that, but I'm not liking 3 dominators since only 156 laps. Yeah, I can see that. It's just, I do think it's viable, especially people are going to be scared of that. I mean, if Logano leads a bunch of laps and finishes top 5, and then Blaney and Truex pick some fast laps and potentially laps led and all get a top 5, I think that's definitely a viable way to go, because if you're 2 cheap options and like Ty Dillon, Ryan Preece crush, then you nail a mid-range option and Stenhouse. I mean, there's a good chance that could be optimal, and people might be scared of that, so it might be like a decent way to get different in tournaments if people are going to be scared away from 3 spend-ups. Now, if it was like Hamlin, Logano, and Harvick having 3 guys in the top 3, I would definitely shy away from that. But with Truex and Blaney starting further back, I think it's fine. Let's see. Dustin says, Joey, Hamlin, Bell, and Matty D for a cash core. I wouldn't play Matty D as a cash core. I think he's more of a tournament option. I think he's going to be anywhere from like 10 to 15% owned today. I would not go Matthew DiBenedetto in cash games, but I like him in tournaments. Let's see. Okay, Zachary says Truex, Blaney, Bell, Jones, Ty Dillon for cash. I think that's fine. You're just locking up place differential. Now, the only concern with that is that Joey Logano, if he leads a bunch of laps in cash and you don't have him, you're probably dead. So I feel like I'd rather play Logano over Bell. But if Logano has issues early and you just went straight place differential, you'll be looking really good. It's just I do think Joey's going to be pretty chalky in cash because he's performed very well in the poll here at Michigan. And it's tough to pass the leader at Michigan. So it's going to be tough not to play Joey in cash games. So unless you really don't like him. But Tony says, do you see a particular car manufacturer that will do the best today? Ford, Toyota, Chevy, or does that matter here? So it's kind of like Ford's overall been the fastest cars this season. Ryan Blaney, Keselowski, Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, they all been fantastic. But you also got to keep in mind there's also some, Chase Elliott has been very fast so far this season. Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex, they've been fast occasionally. So really they're all in play here. But overall this season, the Fords have been the strongest. But then you got guys like Denny Hamlin, who's a Toyota, who's obviously who makes noise every single week. So it's really just, that's not something I'm putting too much into account. Hunter says, hey Chris, what's your top 2 mid-range value plays? 7K to 9K. So 7K through 9K, my favorite guys in that price range. Well, I would say Eric Jones is number 1 at 8,800. I think he's a fantastic play today. And then another guy in that price range, I would say either William Byron or Kurt Busch. I think grade out pretty well in that 7K to 8K range. So those are the 2 guys I would go with there. Go Luck Man says, which 2 under 7K? I would say Stenhouse and Preece are my two favorite plays underneath 7K. Whoops. Okay, my chat went all the way down. I gotta go back up. Sorry. Chris says looks fine here. That's good because I don't know why the live stream was looking buggy earlier, but hopefully it's fixed now. All right, where are we at? Okay, Scary Flying says Bell or Brad Keselowski. I think Keselowski has a higher ceiling. Bell might be the safer play, but I like the ceiling on Keselowski. I'm going to have more Keselowski than I will Bell in tournaments, if that answers your question. That's right where my money's going, so I would definitely say Keselowski then. And when he says thoughts on 3, he's fine. I mean, he's starting near the back of the pack, and he's probably going to finish around 20th place, which is fine. I just think there's better upside plays around that price tag, like Tyler Reddick. He's got legit top 10 potential. Meanwhile, we're probably looking like at a 20th place finish for Nemechek. So I just hate paying that much for him, but I'm going to have a little bit of Nemechek, but not too much. I'd rather play guys like Reddick and Stenhouse in that price range. Timothy says Austin Dillon or Tyler Reddick. I like Tyler Reddick quite a bit in tournaments today. He's just been really solid at these types of tracks, and he's just been really impressive so far this year. Now, it's tough because they've both been really good at these types of tracks, but I'm going to lean Tyler Reddick at a little bit of a cheaper price point. Matt says Blaney Recchi or Jones WB. I'm missing something. Who is WB? KB? I don't know. I'm sorry. But I do like Blaney and Recchi quite a bit there. I think Blaney's a fantastic play in cash because he's been the fastest car at the large oval so far this season, the fastest average green flag speed, and just the overall best numbers overall. And with these tire combinations, Blaney was also first in average green flag speed at both tracks. So I think he's a fantastic play today, and I'm hoping he goes overlooked at that price tag. And he didn't run that well last week, so I definitely like Blaney today. Max says, do I like Harvick for cash? I feel like he's not super necessary for cash because in cash games, I'm looking to play Logano first just to lock up the early dominator points, hopefully, unless Hamlin passes him. I'm going to play both Hamlin and Logano, but in cash games, I'm not going to play both. So I'm going with Logano first, and then I'm probably not going to go Harvick second because we got guys starting first and third. So I'm probably going to end up moving to a guy like either Truex or Ryan Blaney. You could play all three, but if you're just picking two dominators, I think like a Logano paired with a Blaney or a Truex is a pretty safe way to go in this slate. Because you lock in the early dominator points, and then potentially Blaney or Truex could lead the second part of the race. Terry says, what's going on, my boy? Nothing much. Just chilling. Talking NASCAR. UK Cat says, who's some of your top 10 finishers? I mean, it's pretty wide. I mean, pretty much the best cars are more than likely going to finish in the top 10. If you're talking about outside shots at top 10 finishes, I like Eric Jones, William Byron, Tyler Reddick, and Matty Benedetto from outside shots at top 10. But, I mean, if you just had to ask me to put money on guys to finish in the top 10, it's going to be Harvick, Truex, Blaney, Hamlin, Keselowski, those kind of guys. Boring answer there. John says, Austin Dillon or Reddick and Rob points. Your answer earlier skipped. I'll apologize about that. I would say Tyler Reddick, I think. I know he's starting a little bit further up, but I just think he has better potential to finish in the top 10 than Austin Dillon does. Landon says, well, hey, Chris, I was watching Road America Xfinity race, but under lightning delay. Yeah, I heard that. So that's unfortunate. Is it going to continue? Like, are they going to get the race in? I have no idea. Timothy says Harvick or Blaney. Oh man, I want to say Blaney because look, if Harvick doesn't lead laps today, he's kind of screwed at 11,000. Blaney, if he doesn't lead laps, there's still potential there to gain like 8 to 10 spots there. So I would side with Blaney. I'm gonna have more Blaney than Harvick today, but it will be close. I think Harvick's more likely to lead laps than Blaney, but I also like that PDF side we would give with him as well. John says, thanks, Chris. Have a great tournament. Thank you. Back at you. Hopefully it goes well. Jason says, where's my boy McLeod? No McLeod. No McLeod for you. John says, Juliana and Chris, power couple of 2020. Yes. Yep, she is the best. We the People says, Bell's fine. It's just I'm not going to have as much Bell because I want to play some dominators and guys that can finish high. But with there only being 156 laps, I think that makes Bell more viable than it would most weeks. So I definitely think he is certainly in play. But I'm not going to be playing too much of him because I'd rather play the guys with a little bit higher upside and like Keselowski, Hamlin, Blaney, those kind of guys. But I think he's fine today. Joseph says, what do you think of Keselowski today? Keselowski is a fine tournament option. I say it pretty much every single week with Keselowski. There's most of the time he doesn't look like the greatest play on paper, but he just seems to always be there at the end. And at these similar track types this season, he's got the best average finish of 6.6, and he's just been really, really consistent. So he's certainly in play. He usually finds a way on strategy, or he's just in the right place at the right time with a caution, and he seems to get out front at some point. So definitely going to want to have exposure to Keselowski because he's just one of those guys that things usually fall his way. Dalton says rocking Truex, Hamlin, Byron, Jones, Priest, and Suarez. So Truex, Hamlin. Okay, so you got your two dominators, and you got Byron, Jones, place differential, then Priest and Suarez. Is Priest and Suarez too risky? Can come off Jones to get 1-2 Stenhouse. I think that's fine. I think a lot of people are going to have two cheapos in their lineup. So especially me, I'm going to certainly have two value options. So I think that's totally fine. Mike says, hit the like for Chris. I totally agree. Appreciate the likes. It does help me out. I figure we're going to have less people in the chat today because it's a Saturday. imagining like half the people don't even know the races today, and then we also have other sports on as well. So kind of sucks, but do appreciate everyone that's here. Smoking Gun says, "What's up, Chris? Now he's not been talked about, and this has burned me before, and I know he's starting high, but what are your thoughts on Almirola? He's been very fast this year. I think Almirola is a low-owned tournament option today. I'm going to have anywhere from like 5 to 10%. It's just the price tag is rising. Like when he was in the 7K to lower 8K range at this price tag, or at this starting position, it's fine because there's less room for, or there's more room for error. Now it's starting fourth at 9,100. You got Chase Elliott right beside him. You got Eric Jones starting nearly 20 spots further back. You got Kyle Busch right there. He's been fast, so he is worth having some sprinkles in. But man, I just hate that price tag on him. But I do have a little bit. I'm gonna have a little bit of ownership on him just because of how good he's been this year. And it seems to be like what we think happens doesn't happen. What we think doesn't happen will happen. So that's why I'm gonna spread out my ownership for the Dominators today because. Look, with no practice, we don't know who's going to unload the fastest car. Now, we can look at average green flag speed and guess the guys that are going to be fastest, like Kevin Harvick, Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Martin Truex. But some of these guys can completely miss the setup, and they'll just fall straight back. We've seen that happen before, so I think it's a good idea to just spread out your ownership up top and then just kind of focus more on place differential because those guys are less risky because there's a good chance they'll just end up moving up. Dakota says cash locks. I would say Ryan Preece is the cash lock because he is dirt cheap, and there's a good chance he can gain 10 to 15 spots today. And I guess Joey Logano is pretty close to it, starting on the poll at 9,700. John says, one more question today, brother. What do you think of Bowman today for a top 5? Yeah, I kind of forgot to mention Alex Bowman because he's all the way down in that price range, at the mid 7K range. And I do think he's a dominator today. Now, we'll have a little bit of Alex Bowman. He's been great at the large ovals this season. Well, I should say he runs well, but then he doesn't finish well. Because if you're looking at his average running position and average finish, I did this the other day where I calculated who's got the biggest difference in running position and average finish, and that would be Alex Bowman. He has like negative around 7 finish compared to his average running position, but he's got the 5th best average running position. He's got nearly the most laps led and some of the most fast laps, but he just can't finish a race very well. But he was great at the other 2-mile track this season in Auto Club, where he just absolutely dominated that race, scored over 100 fantasy points. I know it's a high tire wear track, and Michigan is not, so it's not as comparable as I would like it to be, but you can certainly put some stock into it of how good he was at that track, and he's been good at some of the other intermediates as well. But I do like Bowman in tournaments. I don't like, not someone I'm going to have too much of, but definitely some. Jason says, make sure he stays hydrated. I am. Although, mouth's getting a little dry right now. Dakota says, studs, scrubs, or balanced in cash. I think in cash, a lot of people are going to end up playing 2 cheap guys. So if that's what you mean as scrubs, star scrubs, I think that's totally fine. Let's see. Hunter says, video for tomorrow's race. Yeah, I'm going to do that tonight. So it's going to be a very busy day. I got baseball later, and then we got NBA going on. Then I got the race, and then I got to do the other video. Then I got to do the article, the projection. So, man, it's going to be very busy today. Very busy. But, yes, I will have a video and a live stream for tomorrow's race. Austin says, biggest fade up top. I'm not fading anybody up top, to be honest. I'm playing Harvick, Truex, Blaney, Hamlin, because I wouldn't recommend fading any of these guys. I'm going to have the lowest on Keselowski, but even then, it's only a few percentage differences than some of the other guys. So I wouldn't recommend fading anybody up top. I mean, if you want to fade anybody, maybe Bell, just because he doesn't have that dominator potential, but even then, there's not many dominator points to go today. So maybe Kyle Busch, just because he just seems to really struggle without practice, and I think he's going to be a pretty good play tomorrow because he's, going to have about 300 miles today, assuming he doesn't wreck out. So Kyle Busch can end up being a pretty good play tomorrow compared to today. So I guess Kyle Busch, but I really wouldn't recommend fading any of these guys. SSG says, how high on Bowman? Not a lot, but I think anywhere from 10 to 15, 10 to 20% is pretty good on Bowman today. Family Man says, who is your favorite low ownership contrarian play? Do you mean like up top? If it's up top, Keselowski might go a little bit under-owned than he should. I think he's totally fine. This is his home track, so you got to keep that in mind as well. Kyle Busch, because, look, people are going to be very upset what happened last week, and he just overall hasn't been that fast this season. He's 5th overall in average green flag speed, but he's like around 10th at these types of tracks. But he did finish 2nd at Auto Club this season, which is the other 2-mile track in length. And then also at Kansas, the last large oval we were at, Kyle Busch was fast. He led all the laps, and he was one of the fastest cars on the track. So I think he's somewhat interesting today, especially people that got burned are going to completely fade him today. I don't mind having some Kyle. As awful as that sounds, he'll probably wreck out and finish last. Let's see. Okay, Bill says, would you go Elliott Priest or Dylan Reddick? I like Elliott Priest. I think that's got some more upside there. Gerald says, am I late? What did I miss? You missed about 30 minutes of me answering questions. That's about it. So if you have a question, you can ask it. Craig Hall says, favorite cash plays today? I'm probably just going to jam in Joey Logano in cash just because he's on the pool. He's going to be high owned. And in cash games, it's probably not going to matter too much what he does because I assume he's going to be one of the highest owned drivers. So you kind of just eat that. Because if you fade him and he just leads pretty much all the laps, you are done for. But if you play him and he doesn't do that well, he's probably going to be high owned to the point where it's not going to matter too much. Then also Ryan Preece I like quite a bit. I like Eric Jones starting 23rd, Ty Dillon starting in the back, and then I think getting a place differential dominator and Truex or Blaney is probably a good idea as well. Wi-Fi says, how do you think the choice rule will impact this? I don't really think it's going to impact the slate too much. It's going to impact restarts, but it's not something I can really say would really change the slate. It's just going to give the guys the benefit of where they want to start if they come out in the pits or earlier or whatever. But I don't really think it's going to impact the slate too much. SSG says Byron. I do like Byron today. He is starting 19th. He's a little pricey, 8,200, but he should contend for a top 10 here. So I do like William Byron. I think he's actually a pretty solid tournament play today. Taylor says, who will be higher owned in GPPs, Blaney or Truex? I think Truex will be just because he's got the bigger name, and he's usually in this price range, while Ryan Blaney's kind of newer to this price range, and Truex is just kind of more of a household name. So I imagine Truex is going to be higher owned, but I think it will be close between those two. Oh, Hunter says William Byron. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I just never heard anyone call him WB before, and I was like, whose name starts with the W? But yeah, William Byron. I apologize. Kevin says, how would you rank for PD plays? Suarez, Priest, Ty LaJoy. I would go Priest, Ty Dillon, LaJoy, and Daniel Suarez there. I think they're all pretty good plays, though. I can't believe I forgot WB was William Byron. Like, I was like, whose name starts with W? But I was thinking of a Dominator. I'm like, there's no Dominator that starts with a W. Let's see. Gerald says, is Bubba going to be fast today? Probably not that fast. He's probably going to be like a 20th place car, which doesn't really offer us much upside. I think there's better plays. I might have like a little sprinkle of Bubba just because he's starting 24th at 6,500, but really not that interested in him. Lana says he's ready for Michigan. Go Chase. Definitely Chase has some upside today. Starting 8th, he's had a fast car at these types of tracks, and he's been pretty good at Michigan. Bourne says, if Logano doesn't lead laps and gets passed by Hamlin and Harvick, will that destroy your lineup? Well, if you have a lot of Logano, it would destroy your lineup for sure. But that's why I'm going to be playing all three, to be honest. Not in the same lineup, but I'm going to have my exposure mixed out because there's really no strong lean. I mean, Logano's in the best spot to lead a bunch of laps, but like all three of those guys are like the heaviest favorites to lead laps in this race. So I think you just mix those guys up. But in cash games, most people are going to play Logano. So even if he does get passed, I don't think it's going to hurt you too bad. Tony says, Kurt Busch or MDB? My projection's like Kurt Busch more, so I'll side with Kurt Busch, but I think both are fine. But I will have more Kurt Busch than Matthew DiBenedetto today. Big Gritter says Truex Hamlin stack. Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I mean, Hamlin's in a good spot to lead laps early on, then you got Truex that could lead laps later in the race, and he's got PD upside, so definitely like Truex Hamlin. I'm sure I'll have plenty of lineups with Truex Hamlin. Gerald says Priest or Newman GPP. Newman's going to be way lower owned, but I think Priest is the much better play. BVB says, what contest do you put 150 lineups in? So some weeks I'll do the big $10, but they haven't been doing the $10. So when it's a $10, I do the 150 max for the $10, but they've been making that $12 recently, and I don't know, I just like sticking with 10. So when it's not $10, I'll do 5 for the lug nut, and then sometimes I'll do some single entries as well. But today I'll be doing the lug nut 150, and then tomorrow I imagine I'll do the same thing. Kevin says, hit that like button, people. Let's win some money today. I totally agree. Hitting the like really does help me out. I do appreciate that. Timothy says, Logano or Elliott for tournaments? Well, if you want the lower ownership, I think Chase Elliott's the way to go. Overall, if you had to ask me who's the better play, I would say Logano. But if you're looking for lower ownership, I don't mind going with Chase there. Lucas says, should we limit our lineups to 2 dominators today? That's a big question for me because I'm like, I really want to play Truex, Blaney, and Logano, but then again, it could work out. So I was looking at the Pocono race because it's kind of like similar in laps. Not as similar, but there's less laps. But one of the optimal lineups on the first Pocono race, I believe there's guys starting 1/3, 1st, 3rd, and 9th. So I know Almirola was in the 7K range, and he did lead a lot of laps early, so it's kind of not the same scenario. But I do think there's scenarios where we can have, 3 guys above 9K all making the optimal lineup if they finish strong and pick up some fast laps and some laps led. So I wouldn't just limit it to 2, because if it happens to be a 3 expensive driver optimal lineup, you're going to be screwed if you don't have any. I think 2 dominators is probably the most optimal way to go, but I don't think stretching it to 3 is the worst thing in the world in some lineups. Chris says cash game, Bell or Harvick with Blaney and Truex, also Stenhouse, Priest, and Ty Dillon. So in cash games, if I'm picking Bell or Harvick, I'm going to go with Harvick there. And then with Blaney and Truex, because you get the early dominator points with Harvick, potentially. And then you got Blaney and Truex, who's got the PD upside, which could honestly win the race at the end of the day. So I think that's totally fine. Mr. Miyagi says thoughts on McDowell. I'm not really playing McDowell today. He's starting 21st, and it was nice when he was starting in the near the 30s or the late 20s, but now that he moved up in owner's points, starting 21st, there's just not much upside here. Now, at these tracks this season, he does have an average finish of 21.8, but there's just really not much upside here. And we got guys like Suarez, Priest, Ty Dillon, LaJoie that can gain 10 to 15 spots, potentially 20 if they run really, really well. But Michael McDowell is kind of just probably going to finish where he starts, maybe gain a couple of spots, but the upside is limited. And I do think he's going to be very low in today. So if you want to go with him in tournaments to sprinkle him in, hope he runs really well again and gets another top 10 like he's done a couple of times this season, you could. I just don't think it's a likely scenario. Tevin says Ty Dillon will be a decent play today. Yeah, for sure. I think Ty Dillon's one of the better plays on the slate. 5,700 starting 34th. He's probably going to finish around 25th, around 20th. Pretty good play. Smoking Gun says, thank you, sir, for the advice. Hope this week is way better than last week. Yeah, last week, I feel like most of my guys did very well, besides Kyle Busch, and the problem was I had 50% Kyle Busch, so that really screwed everything up. Dustin says, I've got Joey, Blaney, and Brad in cash so far. Where do I go from here? Well, I don't really know how much salary you have remaining, but I think probably you're going to have to fit in some guys like Ty Dillon or Ryan Priest, and then Stenhouse is another good option, so you can probably work around in that price range. Chris says, sorry, I meant Bell or Logano in cash with Blaney and Truex. Oh, I'd go Logano over Bell for sure in cash games. Juliana says, looks like no bike riding today. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to be very busy today, so probably not going to have time to ride bikes, unfortunately. Jeff says, how about car packages similar to what was used last year? They're using the high downforce 550 mile per hour horsepower package. That's what they've been using so far this season, and pretty much the cars that have been fast on that, I would assume, are going to be fast once again, because we don't practice, so it's pretty much all we have to go off of. Patrick says, thoughts on Austin Dillon? Hit the like button. Well, since you hit the like button, I got to answer you for sure. I would have answered you anyway, but Austin Dillon's fine. I think he's kind of in that situation. He's kind of in that starting position where it's like, in the price range where it's like, I don't love him, but I think he's fine. He's worthy of at least 10% ownership because he's been great at the large ovals this season. Average finish of 12.2, running position of 14.4. And if you're looking at his numbers, he has 7 top 15s and 9 tries. I think Austin Dillon's a fine play today for sure. Oh, chat just went away. Ashton says, of your lineups, do you have a favorite? I wouldn't really say I have a favorite lineup, because there's just a lot of ways you can go this week. And so I was really struggling just trying to build one. So that's why I just built 150, because it's like, let me just cover my bases here. But there's not one I love, but I would definitely say, so I like the Logano Truex Blaney build, but I also am not sure how I feel about having 3 top end guys, but it looks solid overall because you can fit in Stenhouse and then a Priest, and it still doesn't look too bad, but I also think some of the 2 dominator build lineups look pretty good with like Logano and Blaney. Then you can fit in a guy like Jones and Stenhouse, and they both look good. It's just, it's hard picking between the 2, to be honest. Gerald says, Cole Custer, what's everyone's thoughts? I think Cole Custer's a strong tournament play today. He's starting 16th, which makes him a little tough to play, but he's been running really, really well. And at 6,700, the price isn't too bad either. So I'm definitely going to have exposure in tournaments. He's finished in the top 20 in 7 out of 9 tries. He's got 3 top 15s. And he's in good equipment. He's in Stewart House equipment. So I think he's fine for tournaments. I like that price tag too. And I do think he goes a little bit overlooked. Sean says, Ricky, Harvick, Hamlin, Bell, LaJoie, Priest. So you got Harvick and Hamlin as your 2 dominators. I think that's fine. You got Bell as your place differential, Ricky as your place differential, and LaJoie and Priest. Yeah, I think it's a fine lineup. I probably have that. Dustin says, Chase okay for cash. It's not my favorite cash play, but the price is nice. It's just not my favorite cash play. I'd prefer going up to Logano. honestly, I feel like Jones is a better cash play than Chase Elliott, but I do like Chase Elliott in tournaments, but he's not the first guy to go for in cash games. Mary says, how do you feel about Kenseth? Not good. I don't feel really good about Kenseth. He's probably going to finish 15th to 20th place, which just doesn't really give us too much upside. Austin says, if going Blaney, Logano, Truex. Blaney, Logano, Truex. Okay. Do you like Stenhouse or Reddick paired with them? I would say Stenhouse is the safer choice. I think in tournaments, you're going to get better ownership on Reddick. So cash, I would say Stenhouse. In tournaments, I'd say Reddick. But overall, raw points, I would probably say Stenhouse. Chris says, Busher or Priest in cash? I would go Priest there. By Emerson says, favorite between Suarez, Priest, or LaJoy? That would be Priest for me. Chris says, hey, Goat. Back at you. What's up, Goat? Gerald says, Elliott, Truex, Blaney, Custer, Stenhouse, Priest, GPP. That's good. I think that's totally fine. It's a good GPP lineup. Jason says, bong rip every time someone asks for your favorite play. Probably would not advise against that. All right, I would not advise that to do that. All right, well, I think I caught all the way up to the chat. So if there's not any more questions, we can probably get out of here and start building lineups. If anyone's got any last-second questions, feel free to ask them. I figured we wouldn't have as many people in here today because it's a Saturday. And I know there's other stuff going on as well. We still got over 150 people, which isn't too bad. Questions? All right, but I think, let me just double check the chat again, making sure there's no one else asking questions. Because sometimes it does lag behind for me, but no, I think we're all caught up. All right, and if that's the case, I guess we can probably get out of here. Matt says, how many lineups do you run? I run 150. For other sports, I just build 1 to 3, but for NASCAR, I feel pretty comfortable building 150. So, chat's loading 1 second. But I think that's it for the questions, so I do appreciate everyone stopping by. Or, I guess there's a couple more questions, okay. Chris says, other than your Dom group, I don't think you want to play Hamlin and Harvick together. It's definitely going to be tough to play both those guys because there's no PD upside, and also starting second and third. I really like mixing some of those guys with guys like Truex and Ryan Blaney, for sure. Let's see, Alan says, Penske stack. I definitely like a Penske stack today. I like Keselowski a lot. I like Logano a lot. I like Ryan Blaney. If you want to stack Penske, I say no issue whatsoever with that. Let's see. Landon says, peace, have a good day. Back at you, Landon. We'll be back with another video tonight, another live stream tomorrow. Tony says, I think you could throw a dart in this race. See you next time. Good. See you, Tony. Thanks for stopping by. Todd says, Almirola Dominator. Low chance of it, but I am going to sprinkle in Almirola just because he's been super fast this season, and he's just not someone you've really been able to fade recently. But that price tag makes it really, really tough. KT says, can you play Recce in cash? I do. Just be ready to throw up when he wrecks. Right? But I think he's going to be pretty chalky where it won't hurt you. DJ says, Kurt Busch or Jones GPP? I would go with Eric Jones there for sure. Let's see. Chris says, dart throw with Gase. I just personally X out all of those guys. I don't play any of those scrubs. Never. Maybe. I mean, sometimes it could work out, but I just exit those guys out. Ashton says, do you use a lineup builder to make 150 lineups? Yeah, I upload my projections to Fantasy Cruncher, then I set up my build rules, and then that's what I do pretty much all weekend, which is pretty much what I'm going to do as soon as I get off this. I'm going to start tweaking my lineups. But yes. So I think we caught all the way up, so I am going to get out of here, guys. I do appreciate everybody watching. I wish you guys the best of luck today in the race. Enjoy your weekend, and we will be back here doing this tomorrow, and also have my preview video for the next race up as well. And if you guys are wondering how the starting order is going to be, it's going to be a top 20 invert, then from 21st and back, it's going to be how they finish. So that's pretty much it, but I do appreciate everyone stopping by on your Saturday, and I'm going to head out of here. Wish you guys the best of luck.